Hi, I'm Terry Kolath. I'm here today with a special guest, Nir Cabaretti, conductor of the Southwest Florida Symphony, and he's here to talk a little bit about the symphony, but a lot about an educational program he's going to do for us in the Academy of Lifelong Learning. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Terry, for having me.
Well, we've loved listening to you and watching you at work and enjoying the symphony that you conduct. And a special treat you've given us in the past is a look ahead, an educational sneak peek at the composer and the work that you're going to be covering. And that's what you're going to do for us this time, isn't it?
Right, yeah, and we'll start with Beethoven.
Why are we going to do Beethoven?
Well, it's a good question, but you know, if you look at music history, there are hundreds of composers, and a lot of them are wonderful, genius, etc. There are very few, though, that made a change, that they put a print in the music that stayed much longer after they died. I'm talking now 200 years after Beethoven died. And still it's relevant because it has also a human message in it, and the revolution, I want to say, that Beethoven did in the music at that time is still today relevant. And we have to, of course, know a little bit more about Beethoven, and that's why I would like to use the opportunity to talk to our friends in Shell Point and tell them about what actually Beethoven did. I mean, he wrote the same notes as Mozart and as Brahms were after, but there is a certain message and a certain approach that made things different. He changed the game in many ways, as a person, as a musician, and of course it's related also to the French Revolution that was at that time. So there's a lot of things that I think the audience should know when they come and listen to Beethoven, which we will perform right after.
And in these transformational, transitional times, it takes a special person to rise up and actually be a change agent.
Exactly.
What kind of characteristics did he have that enabled him to do this, do you think?
A very stubborn and absolutely oriented in the direction and the goals he had. You know, before Beethoven, musicians used to work for the elite, for the church, for this prince or for the duke, etc., till Mozart and Haydn, that were really engaged by the Bishop of Salzburg, of the Prince of Esterházy, etc. They produced pieces commissioned by the high-end society. But Beethoven was the first one who says, I'm not working for anyone, I'm working for myself.
That's
and
incredible.
He changed the game, and he became pretty much the very first freelance composer. And he, for example, he admired Napoleon until he figured out what Napoleon did, and it sort of then changed. There's one piece that he entitled The Emperor or the Eroica, etc., but then he wrote pretty much against it. So Beethoven was in many ways a person that stood against the practice of his time, and you have to be somebody that has a vision for that. You know, also, I mean, in his private life, he never got married, never had really a family. If you look like a composer that were before Bach with a lot of kids,
right,
and they were all sort of kind of family-oriented people. Beethoven was musically oriented, and that was really what drove him beyond just writing.
So he really was an outside-the-box thinker,
Absolutely.
as we say.
Absolutely.
And
something that should be said also about, I talked about this stubborn personality. When you look at Beethoven symphonies, for example, the fifth, everybody knows, da-da-da-da. It's not really a tune, it's a rhythmical statement. Now, this rhythmical statement is repeated in a very stubborn way, all the way, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. This is drive. And this is something that was not really before. Composers were writing tunes. Beethoven was tuning the rhythms. It is a very different approach. And I've done a lot of his music, and of course the opera, even the voices, sometimes he used in a percussive way, I want to say. And this is unique. And we would have a chance to talk about him, in Beethoven times, technology became also a little bit more advanced. So Beethoven was the first one to use a metronome, which means to give indications about the tempo, about the speed. This is, for us, is essential, because today I know what Beethoven wanted, like how fast. I don't know how fast Bach wanted his piece to be, or Mozart. I can estimate, we have my teacher, played with his teacher, So we go back, and it's sort of a tradition that we think we know how Mozart or whatever wanted their piece to be performed like. But with Beethoven, we are sure, because it's written.
It seems, just from the little bit of time we've talked this morning, that you really appreciate Beethoven and what he did.
I would say more than appreciate. I'm obsessed with Beethoven.
Super for us, right?
I've done all the symphonies. I've done his only opera. I've done all these concertos, actually, except for one piano concerto I didn't do. I did pretty much everything that Beethoven wrote. So, and I played the piano. I played his sonatas. I played a lot of his stuff. So I feel I know what the man sort of was creating. I'm not sure I'm right, but I feel I know the person.
You have an opportunity to come and hear from Maestro Cavaretti exactly what he feels about Beethoven on one day, and then the next day the opportunity to enjoy the symphony for the love of Beethoven. Won't you join us for both events?